Hello and welcome to Blue Army TV. I'm sitting here as the season draws to a close to give you my season review. It's a video that I've been wanting to make for a while, but I haven't really been, prepared enough to speak about it. But I've been looking back on some of the matches recently, taking notes, looking at fixtures and where results went our way, where they didn't. And I'm going to start. I'm going to review the season from the very start today, and starting off with the first three matches, an EFL Cup game, or the Checker Trade Trophy as it's usually known, against Fleetwood, saw us lose 3-1, with the standout performer that day being Gimme Toure, who I believe also got the goal from a free kick. However, following that disappointing result came two 3-0 defeats at the hands of Oldham in the EFL Cup, the League Cup this time, and also Cambridge in the league. Now, Cambridge obviously went on to have such a successful campaign, but at the time, that was such a big, massive hit for us at the start of the season, and it was a moment where we were thinking, oh no, not again. Things weren't clicking with the team, and I think Oldham was probably one of the worst games I've seen. And we've had success in that cup in the past. I remember last year under Stephen Presley, we went on to beat Barnsley 3-0 away from home, which was massive because they're a championship team and they're playing in the playoffs to get into the Premier League as we speak. But the start of the season with such a new team, it was never going to go 100% to plan. But even so, conceding 9 goals in 3 games really wasn't good enough, and people started to fear the worst. However, after those matches, we then came on to the first game of the season that we were allowed fans back into the stadium. And it was a test game. We were the first club to allow fans back into games for quite some time, and it was Carlisle 2, Southend 0. And although Southend were back to go down, and in the end they did go down, it was a better performance. I remember Gimme Toure played really well that game. He got the assist for Josh Coyote's opening goal. Slots in at the bottom corner. Mari Patrick gets a goal as well. Excellent finish from both of them. It was really good, positive signs, and it looked like we were going strong going into the next game. However, afterwards, despite dominating the next game, we fell to a 1-0 defeat at Scunthorpe. Now, Scunthorpe obviously went on to be relegation fighters, didn't go down in the end, but it was only due to the shortcomings of Southend and Grimsby that really stopped them from going down, because in any other season, I think they'd have probably gone down. They had a good goal scorer in Ryan Loft, and that was probably about it. Gilead, who plays for them, he had a decent enough season, but overall their squad just really wasn't good, and they did not play well this season. However, after that disappointing result, a 10-man Carlisle went on to win the Cumbrian Derby 1-0. Now, John Mellish got his first goal of the season in this match, which was a sign of things to come, as it turns out, but it was a shaky game. I almost had a heart attack watching that one. But at Brunton Park, we came away with 3 points against our local rivals, which at the time was a really big result, because as a team who were, playoff players, hopefuls at the time, a win against a local derby was a massive, massive result, and to grind out the result with 10 men was a massive achievement for us at the time. After that happened, the Football League trophy returned, a cup that people don't seem to take too seriously, but we fell to defeat, although not without its excitement, with John Mellish getting a brace with a 5-3 defeat at Sunderland, and possibly one of the goal of the season contenders in John Mellish's goal. Lewis Alessandro probably should have shot, didn't, pulled it back to John Mellish. Excellent finish against his boyhood club. I could tell it meant a lot to him. He played brilliantly that game, not just in his goals but in his work rate, and that's John Mellish this season. He's just been immense in his work rate and stuff like that. But and after that, Port Vale 1-0 win. Farman saves a penalty. I believe Mellish gets the goal. After that, 3-2 to Carlisle against Colchester. Mellish getting another goal, and you see a pattern here. We're winning, not by much, but we're winning, and John Mellish seems to be pulling us just over the line in these games. And it was at this time of the season where we started to pull off towards the end, towards the top end of the table. However, after that, 2 disappointing draws to 2 bottom sides. We had a 1-1 draw to Grimsby, coming only at the hands of an own goal from their own keeper, and a 1-1 draw with Oldham, who were realistically mid-table at best, because it's been another disappointing season for Oldham as well. and Oldham are a team that I've always thought if they show up, they'll beat anybody in the division, which I think is fact. But they just have so many poor performances, and I think Keith Curle, with the power of Keith Curle and with some of the players they do have, because they have some quality players, I think they'll go on to push for, top half of the table anyways next season, because they are such a big club. They're an ex-Premier League club. They shouldn't be in this division. Same with Bolton, who have actually gone up, but Oldham, it's disappointing to see them in this league, and it's disappointing to see them do so bad, because they're a northern team as well, and I just want to see Oldham do well, just hopefully not at the expense of Carlisle. However, after that, promotions chasing Morecambe were beaten 3-1 by us at home, and a closer game than the scoreline let on for us to believe, because I remember watching that game. We didn't pull ahead massively in that game. I remember being not so confident. We played well. We did play well. All right, that can't be taken away from us. But it wasn't such an easy game as the scoreline led us to believe. However, 10-men Carlisle could not pull off the result in the next match against Exeter, as we felt a 1-0 defeat to them. Exeter are a big team. As much as I don't like them, they are a big team. And Exeter just, it's very difficult to beat. They're another team that on their day can beat anybody, but aren't as consistent as they should be to get promoted. And that's the key with Exeter. And on that day, it just wasn't a good game of football from either side. I think they were just a little bit more streetwise than us. We got frustrated, got a man sent off. I believe that was Gimme Toure. And it just did not go well for us that day. It was Gimme Toure got sent off. Parks, ex-Carlisle defender, getting the goal for Exeter. It was a disappointing day for us, especially with us pushing towards the top end of the table that day. But one of the next matches, one I remember vividly, was Newport County. John Mellish with a brace. Obviously, he at the time was absolutely flying high. Jamie Devitt getting the goal for Newport. I remember we were 3-0 up and we almost bottled it in the last few minutes. And we were close to conceding a third with a few close decisions from the ref. But that 3-2 game gives people hope of going towards the top of the table. However, after that, Hayes and Yedding FC, the Little Minnows in the FA Cup, we should have smashed them. We got smashed, pretty much. We were in added time, 2-0 down. I just wanted to die at this point. To be perfectly honest with you, it wasn't great. It wasn't a great performance. I remember Gavin Riley hitting the post. Nothing went our way that day. We played with a slightly worse side than we were playing the league, but they're all professional players, and we're playing against a side that are 3 divisions lower than us. We should be beating them easily, but in the end, John Mellish pulls 2 late goals back. One an excellent finish, the other one just somehow fumbles in. But I remember Gavin Riley scoring the last penalty for us and sending us through. And although it was against a really low league side in the FA Cup, a competition where we're probably not going to win for a good few years. We weren't going to win it this year, even if we had got through, and we did. But I celebrated that goal like mad. It was amazing. Just the comeback, it was immense. Hayes and Yedding. That game was great. And I have every respect to Hayes and Yedding and their fans, because that club, they give it their all, and I don't think their fans could have asked much more from the team, especially with the way they played and especially how they went 2-0 up on us. But on to the next game now. A 2-1 loss to Cheltenham and a 3-1 win against Aston Villa's under-21s. What can you say about Cheltenham? Cheltenham are the best team in the division, especially in the table. But that brings us on to the Tranmere game, another defeat, and then the Doncaster game, yet another defeat. 2 games there. We were on a losing streak, to be honest with you. People started to believe that this was the end of our good run of form. Salford, a game where we were allowed the fans back. A 2-0 win against the biggest side, the biggest financial side in the league at the very start of December. We were going into the automatic places. There was a few instances where we had just missed out on the automatics. We were stuck in the playoffs, which I say stuck in the playoffs, and I definitely took that when the season finished. But we got that win at Salford, and fans were there to see it, and it was an amazing feeling being there. The next game away at Bradford, we won 1-0. A game against Stevenage next at Brunton Park. I was there for that game. It was amazing. 4-0, our biggest win of the season. Joe Riley with an unbelievable goal in that game. It was an amazing goal from Joe Riley. And he's been one of the standout players of the season. I don't think anyone can deny that. He was just... Yeah, he was a great player in that game. And that 4-0 was probably the best we have played. You know, Stevenage should have been relegated last season by default. But, you know, we managed to come through with it. Coming on to the next game, 1-0 at Mansfield, and that is when I thought we were going to go up. We got them 3 games, Salford, Bradford and Stevenage. I thought, and Mansfield as well. Them 4 games I thought were a real telling few games, because they were all against solid sides on the day, but not towards the top. They're the teams we need to be beaten if we're going to be... They're the teams we were compared to at the start of the season. You know, mid-table sides, good on the day, not quite the very best, and we beat all 4 of them. And that was a massive accomplishment at the time. That is probably the highest I have felt as a Carlisle fan. At the time, I think that put us top of the league. It was immense that time of year, at the end of December. And we went into December with such high hopes for it. But then on the 19th of December, again against Forest Green, I think they were challenging for top spot at the time as well. A 1-0 defeat away from home. And especially against a team who, you know, we had such a good record against, a 1-0 defeat was not ideal. And then probably the worst game of the season came up next, 3-3 against Bolton. A game I was at the ground for, 3-0 up. You know, we were flying against Bolton. You know, it was great seeing Gethin Jones look a bit disappointed, as much as I don't blame him for leaving. You know, it was great showing him that he went to a smaller club at the time. But conceding 3 goals in the last 10 minutes of the game, 2 of them coming in added time, it was so frustrating. And I left the ground not disappointed. I was not disappointed. I was angry because, you know, we just let it slip, and it had been a constant thing throughout that part of the season where we drop off towards the end of games, and it was just such a disappointing result. And then that signal was, you know, I was really disappointed with that. You know, we had a point to prove in our next game, I think, against Walsall, and we definitely did that. 2-0 win at Walsall. Taylor Charters getting his first assist as a Carlisle player, his first league start as well, which was a good talking point from that game. But goals from Amari Patrick, they saw us through in that game. His goal was a very, very good finish in that game, Amari Patrick's goal against Walsall. Walsall, they didn't have the best of seasons, they were another mid-table side, but we showed our dominance over them that day. And that was the end of December, leading into the January transfer window, the dreaded January transfer window. And of course, that led us on to our break, our 1-month break from football, which is where things ultimately went bad, you know. We saw Gavin Riley leave the club, Ofrande Zanzala came into the club in January, Rhys Bennett came in, Sedwin Scott, Conor Malley left. You know, there was some transfer business in the January transfer window, but the key thing to notice was the spine of our team stayed exactly the same. You know, the midfield, John Mellish, Callum Guy, Joe Riley, them 3 seemed to be stable in the midfield together. Our attacking options were a bit mix and match depending on the opponent, but again the back 4 was usually Tanner, Hayden, and then Bennett when he came in January with Anderton and Farman and Nets. But, you know, apart from maybe Bennett, our team really didn't change, at least at that moment in time. But the first game back from the break, clearly very rusty. A 1-0 win over Exeter, the reverse result of what happened in the first fixture. And Exeter, you know, we beat them fairly. We were not brilliant on the day, but neither were Exeter, and we did just enough to get us over the line. And it wasn't a great game. You know, fans weren't allowed back in the ground again after this. It was another lockdown. The fans were kicked back out of the ground. It wasn't a great game, but we won. and it looked like we were still on that upward trajectory. But it was at this point, and I've seen a statement on Twitter that I've referred back to a few times, especially on the Blue Army podcast, which you should all go and listen to. And that is first half Barcelona, second half Barnet, because this second half of the season really took a bad turn for us. After that, 2-1 defeat to Forest Green, a 1-0 defeat to Harrogate Town, a 1-1 draw to Salford, a 3-2 defeat to Tranmere, a 3-1 defeat to Oldham, and you see these defeats are piling up. You can blame it on rustiness, and that's what it was at the time. Players still suffering from the effects of COVID-19, and the luck and our momentum had been killed at this time, and we were just falling down the leagues. And I remember thinking, right, we just need to win this next match and we'll go back into the automatics, or we just need to win this next match and we'll go back into the playoffs. But we sank all the way down to 10th, and we'd a 2-1 defeat to Colchester, who were really, really out of form club at the time. Was a low point for us. Followed by a 3-1 defeat to Morecambe, a 1-1 draw with bottom of the table Grimsby, coming courtesy of their own, it's an own goal, I believe. And then we turned it round at Bradford, a 3-1 win over Bradford. This game looked like a turning point. Was it a turning point? Not so much. It was just, Bradford aren't really a good team, and you can tell how good a team's done in the season just looking at their retained release list, because Bradford have released pretty much their entire squad with only a few key players remaining. Elliot Watt, I believe, is still there. He's one of the players who stayed. He was obviously with us last season on loan from Wolves, and I remember seeing him play against Carlisle in the EFL Cup not so long ago for Wolves, for the Wolves under-21 side anyways. But Bradford didn't play well. We beat them 3-1. We beat them convincingly as well. It wasn't close. We could have scored more. However, then came a 1-1 draw to Mansfield Town, and then a 10-man Carlisle fell to defeat 3-1 to Stevenage. And considering that was a team in the first half of the season we had beat convincingly, a 3-1 defeat really wasn't good enough. And we kept falling further and further down the table, to the point where it became, New Year's we were top of the table, and now coming at the end of the season we're 10th, 11th, 12th. And it's mad because, the playoffs weren't a million miles away, but we should have been in the automatics at this point. That bad run of games killed off that season, and the momentum was completely gone by this point. Following that came a 1-0 defeat to Leyton Orient, following a really late mistake from Paul Farman. A 2-1 loss to Cambridge, top of the league at the time. That can't really be... Nick Anderton was perhaps at fault for one of the goals, but I don't think it was really his fault altogether. Coming at the end of the season, though, we had a 2-0 win at Crawley, a 2-0 win at Southend, and a 2-0 win at Scunthorpe, which saw us climb back into the race for the playoffs. And you can tell by now this was a massive roller coaster of a season, because them 3 2-0 wins were really big for us at the time. Even though some of the teams there were towards the bottom end of the table at the time and really had nothing to play for. But you can argue that Southend, as one of them teams, they did have something to play for. They weren't yet relegated. They looked all but relegated, but And then came the Cumbrian Derby. The Cumbrian Derby started off well for us in the first few minutes. I think it was the 3rd minute. Jack Armour scored his first league goal of the season. It was a good finish from a cross. He scored it well. However, 2 of the worst goals we've conceded all season, 2 massive misjudgments. I believe Rod McDonald you could argue, was at fault for both of them. Led Barrett 2-1 up. We managed to scrape a last minute equaliser with Zanzala to gain the point, but Barra weren't. They're not, as much as I respect Barra as a club. Climbing up from non-league to get into the EFL is no easy task, but they weren't a top League 2 side like we were believing ourselves to be, and we should have beat them that day. And we had a chance later on where we could have beat them, but it didn't come. And we got away with just a point, and considering we were ahead at a point in that game, and yes, it was one of our first points from coming behind in a game, it was a disappointing point. And then, on top of that, we then go away to Port Vale, draw. It's starting to become a pattern here. Draw at Port Vale, and then a 1-0 defeat at Bolton. High-flying Bolton. I believe, personally, that was the game where I thought the nail was in the coffin, and we might, this season might just slip away into obscurity like a few other seasons have. After that, a 1-1 draw with Harrogate Town, a 1-1 draw with top-of-the-table Cheltenham, and then it was impossible. At that point, it was impossible for us to go up. Mathematically impossible for us to do, and I think we were also stuck in guaranteed 10th. With 2 games left, not yet. We hadn't yet recorded a victory from a losing position in the season, and considering we had 2 games left, that really wasn't good enough. That came in the next game. We were behind at Leyton Orient, but we came back to win 3-2. One of the best games I've seen all season, and a last-minute winner for George Tanner. But at the end of the day, it was perhaps too little, too late in that game. And then, it comes to the end of the season. We want to finish it off in a good way. A 0-0 draw with Walsall. A really bad way to end the season. However, I think you can take a lot from this season. As disappointing as the end of the season was, I think the fact that our retained released list has come out, and we've only released a few players. We've released, Sedwin Scott, who didn't play for us really. We've released, Dean Furman, who didn't play for us. He's getting old now. And we've kept the likes of Callum Guy, Joe Riley, John Mellish on a long-term contract now. It came out earlier today that Josh Dixon's just signed a long-term contract with the club, and he's an exciting player that I'd like to see play a bit more next season. But it's a building step. It's Chris Beech's first full season. He's built a good squad. I'd like to see a few of them tied down for a few more years, because there is a lot of players who are running out of contract at the end of this season. But, it hasn't gone well for us in the end of this season. And I think we have been the unluckiest team in this league by quite some time. Newport County, the game getting called off in the big break in January. Something suspicious went on there. They were in the midst of a transitional period with signings, and that would have been the best time to play them. And I personally believe that they called that game off on purpose so they could get some new players in. But that's the kind of stuff that happens in football. The COVID breaks, no fans, because I think Carlisle is a lot about the fans. We don't have the biggest financial budget in the league. You can believe about that what you want, whether we should have a new owner or investors or whatever, but I think a lot of what Carlisle is because of the supporters, and we have missed them this season. We definitely have missed them this season. They could have helped us keep the momentum. I missed going. It depressed me, and I don't want to use this excuse, but do you really want to go up in a year that fans aren't there to see it? I wouldn't have complained if we'd have gone up, but it's another season. If I could choose whether to go up next season or this season, it would be next season, because I want to be there for it. And I think that if we can get a few signings in, I watched the boardroom directors sort of forum thing of questions earlier in the week, and it's been said that they're looking for an out-and-out striker, which is what we missed this season. Gavin Riley obviously leaving in January. He didn't live up to the hype that was built up around him. Maybe Zanzala, if he signs the contract, can be that player, but it's a building step. None of our front players scored into double figures. John Mellish ended the season as top goal scorer with 16 goals. He's here next season. That's a good thing. Reece Bennett looks like he could be leaving, with comments made on his live stream. You can think of that what you will. I personally believe it's not great from either party, to be honest with you. If you shouldn't offer him lower wages. If you don't have the money, just tell him you don't have the money. However, if you're Reece Bennett, you shouldn't come out on some sort of live stream on your Twitch channel and talk about how negotiations are going over over some gameplay on your Twitch stream. You shouldn't really be going over that, because it's not. I personally don't think that was professional of him to do. But look, whether he's here next season, I don't think he will. We're going to look for some more players, and we can build on the core group of players. Aaron Hayden, I believe, is our best defender. George Tanner, massive player. You know, he is a brilliant player, young player. He's here next season. Jack Armour, you know, whether he'll be our first choice left back or Nick Anderton will be, you know, Nick Anderton being the captain, I think either of them can do a job at left back on the day. And Jack Armour being so young, I think Preston will be looking at him now and thinking, maybe he's the one that got away, maybe we shouldn't have let him go. But there's other players in there. You know, Luis Alessandra's quality on his day. I remember seeing him score that goal, my personal goal of the season against Salford in the 2-1 win. A crazy curled effort. I thought it was brilliant. Callum Guy, he's staying with us. He's the big one. He's the big one that's staying. He's activated a clause in his contract, or the club has, that keeps him here till next season. Top assister in the league. By far our best player of the year. I think I'll give some titles now. And I'm going to say the best player of the season, my player of the season, Callum Guy. You know, my favourite goal of the season, Luis Alessandra's against Salford. My favourite game, that would probably be the Leyton Orient one when we came back, or the Hayes and Yedden one. I think I'll give it to the Hayes and Yedden one because I love the FA Cup so much. But look, it's a season that can be built on, and I am optimistic for next season. I am, because we've got a good group of players, and if you can just get them signings in, you can get one or two, you know, decent players coming through the door. Because Chris Beach obviously has a knack for finding good players. You can tell that from this squad. You know, Joe Riley was so relieved to have even received a contract offer from a professional club when he signed. Now I think there'll be League One clubs looking to sign him, or even higher up than that. Callum Guy from Blackpool, you know, it was completely out of favour at Blackpool, but now I bet Blackpool are wishing they had him in the side. You know, they're challenging for the Championship this season, but I bet they wish they had him. John Mellish from obscurity when he came in, picked him out of the reserves team, put him in a reserve match, you know. He's come into our team and he's been our best player. One of our best players this season, top goal scorer from midfield. You know, he maybe doesn't have the flicks and the tricks, like I've always said, but he works hard and he gets goals, and that's what he's there. That's what he's paid to do, and I'm glad that's what he will be doing next season, or at least I hope. He's definitely going to be here for next season, though. And yeah, if we can just get a few players in, get a good striker in, maybe get a big solid defender as well. Maybe, you know, a lot of people are asking for Paul Farman to stay. I personally think he'll be leaving, but you know, do we need a new goalkeeper? I think Magnus Norman is a good young keeper who we can trust. And although it has been a disappointing season, at least end to this season, it hasn't been a complete failure. We finished top half with a bottom half budget. And that's the overview I think I'm going to take from this. And I think the overview I'm going to take, the overall moral from this season is it's a build and step. And we can definitely go on and do it next season if things fall into place. So yeah, thanks for listening. It's been great this season, and I've loved the growth of the channel over the past year, over this past season. Obviously, getting invited to do some podcasts with the Blue Army podcast has been brilliant as well. And I think, you know, I like going on that podcast, but I couldn't be going on that podcast if it wasn't for the people watching these videos. So I'm just wanting to say, you know, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support over the past year. It's meant the world to me. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. In a bit.